Hey there, this is Mr. Icarus, and welcome to yet another edition of Doom Mod Madness. This time round, we are playing as the goddamn Batman, because we are playing Batman Doom. Not just any regular version of Batman Doom, this is actually Batman Doom Reborn. And what makes this slightly different from the original version is that it's been rejigged ever so slightly to work a bit better with source ports such as GZ Doom, taking advantage of a few more of the features such as slightly fancier lighting, for example. But for the most part, this is still the same old Batman Doom Total Conversion that some of you may have played back in 1999, but that doesn't make it hokey or old hat, far from it. Batman Doom actually does quite a lot of impressive stuff, both for the day and in regard to playing it now with the advent of much more technically accomplished mods. This section right here in the first level is a pretty good example of what I'm on about, because you get on this subway train and it starts moving, or at least you get the impression that it's moving somewhere, what with the textures just outside the window. And the whole objective here is to fight your way to the front of this train and eventually flip the switch in the control room. And this, in theory, stops the train and puts you in a new section of level, in a new platform. But that's not what's actually happened here. What's actually happened is an intelligent bit of sleight of hand, so only a few key objects have actually shifted outside this section of level. You've got the cones where the stairway used to be, where there used to be a crate at the back here. It's been swapped for an item that you can now pick up, but it still all gives you the impression that you've traveled somewhere, that you've gone further than you actually have, and that is just a really cool little bit of level design. Outside of beating up thugs in perfectly good subway stations, you'll be spending the vast majority of Batman Doom hunting down the Caped Crusaders Rogues Gallery. Each one of these has their own chapter dedicated to them, and you'll spend the start of each here, in the Batcave. For the most part, it simply serves as a location for you to stock up on a little extra health and ammunition between chapters, but as far as intermission levels go, it does a pretty good job of making you feel like the goddamn Batman, what with all the villainous memorabilia kicking around in the back, and a chibi Batmobile. It's kind of adorable in its own way. Once you've embarked from the Batcave, you'll find yourself in a sequence of levels, usually 2 to 3 maps in length, culminating in a climactic boss fight with that chapter's villain. The first chapter here, for example, involves chasing after Killer Croc, and as you might imagine, that involves a lot of trawling through sewers. Nice to see that they're getting the sewer levels out of the way early here, at the very least. But even though it is a sewer level, there's still a few nice touches scattered around here. You'll occasionally have thugs ambush you from the water itself, springing out of absolutely nowhere, causing me to wonder how long they've been down there holding their breath. And you'll also have sections of the map where you need to do stuff like alter the water level in order to escape a certain location. It's little touches like that that keep a level, even as generic as a sewer level, from being too generic, and it's something that's thankfully continued throughout the vast majority of the other levels that you'll visit during the course of Batman Doom. Much like Killer Croc and the sewer level, you'll find that the other villains here in Batman Doom have their own appropriately themed levels too, and it's all the more impressive to me considering just how many levels there are here. As I mentioned earlier, there's roughly 2 to 3 maps per chapter, each chapter dedicated to a particular villain, and in total, there are 7 villains. That's a lot of maps. I hope then that you'll forgive me if for the sake of brevity I just keep this to the maps that intrigued me the most during the course of Batman Doom. This one in particular is actually part of Scarecrow's chapter. And the reason why I find it so interesting is because it's such a departure from the rest of the maps in Batman Doom. Most of the others take place in a lot more urban environments, whereas this one is practically in the sticks, and it makes great use of the cornfield concept. It's actually quite disorientating. You'll spend a fair amount of it just running in circles until you finally find the correct way out. Not to mention the theming is an absolute shoo-in as well. I mean, Scarecrow, cornfield scarecrows. It's obvious, really. Another map I quite enjoyed was the second map in the Two-Face chapter, mainly because it lets you indulge in a little bit of rooftop battling. It's something that you'd expect to be part of the course for Batman, but not something you'd generally expect to see in a Doom Total Conversion Batman mod. It's definitely something that impressed me, and it's something that's liberally scattered across a few previous maps as well. Opens them up, makes them feel a hell of a lot more explorable. And that's no different here, because not only can you battle across the rooftops, you can also get down to street level. It just makes it feel like a genuine chunk of a city that's been cordoned off, and even better, you can get back up to those rooftops with a few strategically placed ladders about the place, and you can get into the buildings from the top as well, so it feels like a fully fleshed out location. You feel like you're searching every nook and cranny for those vital keys to move forward. And to be honest, if there's only one thing missing from this that would really seal the deal, it would be a grappling hook, but I can only imagine how much of a pain in the arse that would be to implement. This one's an interesting pick. It's actually part of the Joker's chapter here in Batman Doom, and it actually takes its cues from Tim Burton's Batman. There's a few locations in this chapter that take inspiration from that movie, this being Axis Chemicals, where the Joker fell into a vat and got his horrific Jack Nicholson face in the movie, and this one's interesting to me more for the spectacle than the construction. It's actually got a few really frustrating elements to it, elements that actually are spread out across the mod as a whole. It's mostly to do with switches and not being entirely sure what the hell the switch you just flipped actually did. It's a constant bugbear of mine, but when it comes down to it, it's got a really, really cool moment for a finale. Basically, the whole point of being here, much like in the movie, is to blow it to smithereens, and it's not just press a button and the level ends, you get to run away from a wall of explosions and flame. It is pretty goddamn cool. It's something I have never ever seen before in a Doom mod. And you've got to be careful because you're running across a minefield here. Those mines can sometimes insta-kill you if you're not careful. And I mean, sure, the wall of flame isn't really moving all that fast, but all the better to look back and just see how cool the entire thing is. It's pretty damn impressive. Now, as you can imagine, it's not all sunshine and happiness when it comes to every single map available here in Batman Doom. There are a few duds, there are a few maps that get tremendously frustrating, there are some maps that rely heavily on trial and error, on things that you would have no way of anticipating before you play through it the first time. And this map right here is a pretty good example of that. It's just chock full of things that can pretty much insta-kill you. Lots of explosions. I mean, this one here is pretty well signposted, but there'll be moments where you just walk down a corridor and suddenly the wall will explode, you're suddenly very dead, and oh boy, you're gonna have to start the entire level again. It's the kind of thing that gets pretty old pretty quick. But mercifully, this level right here is pretty much the worst it ever gets. I suppose one of the major things I should address here about Batman Doom is how lethal some of the weaponry seems. I mean, as most of you out there are aware of, Batman is one of those superheroes that likes to use non-lethal means to dispatch with his enemies. He likes to bring them to justice, he likes to apprehend them alive, but judging from the blood splatter that you get from most of the weaponry here, I'm thinking this version of Batman has just kind of gotten sick of everyone's shit. Sidestepping the issue of superhero ethics for a moment, it's pretty clear to see the parallel between Batman's arsenal here and the arsenal of Doom Guy. For example, this weapon right here is a very clear analogue for the super shotgun. It takes a fair bit of reload time, and it also packs a very considerable double-barreled style punch. The regular shotgun analog, however, is a little tougher to spot. You may have seen me using it earlier with the dual gauntlets that shoot capsules from the wrist. They've got the minigun analog with the rapid-fire wrist as well, and the Batarang obviously replaces the pistol. When it comes to weapons higher up the list, however, that's where you get back into the question of superhero ethics, because this, I'm pretty sure, is a flamethrower. Yeah, that's a guy on fire. This version of Batman is pissed off. When it comes to dealing with the boss characters in Batman Doom, some weaponry is certainly more viable than others. Stuff like this particular weapon, the rapid fire wrist, doesn't really deal a lot of immediate damage, but stuff like the smoke bomb, good grief, does it take chunks out of the enemy health bar. Killer Croc here is actually one of the more impressive bosses in my opinion, just because of the behaviors that he has, because he can run around picking up rocks and just lob them straight at your face, but unfortunately, he doesn't really stand a chance against a smoke bomb. It's pretty much Batman Doom's replacement for the rocket launcher. But just in case you haven't noticed, this map here takes place in Arkham Asylum, and the whole story behind this is that Bane has decided to ruin Batman's day and break everyone out of the clink. So all that effort that you expended bringing these guys to justice, well, you're gonna have to expend just a tad more to make sure they stay down for good. It's pretty much a boss rush level, and thankfully it's not a 100% copy-paste job. That's something that irritates the crap out of me with certain boss rush stages, but at least here they try and change the location around a bit. You're not dealing with the exact same situation as you were initially with most of these guys. I mean, Killer Croc is pretty similar, but there's not really much you can change with that. You put him in any location with rocks on the floor, that's what he's all about. He's going to try and throw rocks at you. But at least with Two-Face, he was up on a plinth, and this one here, which I believe is going to lead to Tallyman. Honestly, worst villain to pick for the Rogues Gallery ever. At least puts you in an area where you can move around and get cover, because he does have some devastating weaponry that can really take chunks out of your health if you're in direct line of sight. But who is the goddamn Tallyman? I have no idea. I never heard of the Tallyman before I played this mod. Maybe someone can enlighten me in the comments. But as all things must come to an end, so too does Batman Doom, and the final confrontation here takes place in the Batcave versus Bane. The kicker here being that you can't defeat him using any of your previously acquired weapons. You've got to defeat him using these gauntlets you pick up at the start of the level. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the original version, I believe you could swap out to your pre-existing weapons and try to defeat him that way, but the mod would actually penalize you for doing so. The only official way, the only way to actually beat the game here is to use these gauntlets. And you've got to be kind of careful because he's got that charging elbow attack. And really, that's your window of opportunity because he's got a little bit of a pause where he tries to taunt you, and then you can just wail on him and take a few chunks out of his health bar. But as far as final confrontations go, it's a fine way to end Batman Doom. It's got a decent amount of build-up, what with Bane trying to break out all of your previously defeated villains out of Arkham, and stripping you down just to your fists does make it feel ever so slightly more tense. I've also got to say it's a fantastic decision to have this fight set in the Batcave itself, especially after you spend so many intermissions just taking a little bit of a breather down here, and having Bane invade it and smash everything up feels like the final insult to Batman. It does feel truly climactic. So if I were to rate Batman Doom on a scale between not very Batman and very Batman indeed, I'd say that Batman Doom certainly falls around the quite Batman part of the spectrum. I mean, sure, this version of Batman seems to be a hell of a lot more killy than the version of Batman everyone seems to know and love, but I can't deny that this mod does a damn fine job of replicating the experience of being the goddamn Batman. And while I mentioned earlier that there are a few frustrations to be experienced level design-wise, I still feel like the good still far outweighs the bad. There's a lot of fun to be had here. Levels like this, for example, give you a tremendous sense of verticality. Being able to go from street level to roof level, for me, that feels like what being Batman is all about. I mean, sure, you don't have a grappling hook, but hey, you can't have absolutely everything in a Doom Total Conversion. But in any case, if you feel like checking this out for yourself, and you should, considering this is a total conversion classic, the link is of course in the description below. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Feel free to let me know what you thought in the comments below, and feel free to suggest any mods you'd like to see me cover in future episodes of Doom Mod Madness. This has been Mr. Icarus, feeling very Batman indeed. Icarus out.